You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship. You're listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm here with Niki Sims and Andrew Jackson. We are in lovely Salt Lake City. Just landed a couple hours ago. Travel podcast. So we're here to do a camp this weekend. We're super excited about it here in Salt Lake City. It's been nice seeing the world kind of open back up. And so we're excited to be able to hang out in Salt Lake City. Beautiful area in the mountains. Just love it.
You think you get used to that view and just sort of like not notice mountains everywhere?
I don't know,
It's
man.
crazy.
It was really beautiful.
The gym was gorgeous.
So I'm so stoked. We announced officially the block party this past week with some of the details. It's coming up the first weekend in August. I think it's 6th through the 8th in Springfield, Missouri, my hometown. How stoked are you guys for this thing?
Superty duperty stoked. I cannot wait to party.
Very excited. Yeah, it's been 2 years, I think, since we've been able to get everybody together. And
Yeah.
We had laid down the foundation for this party a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Matt rented this huge, cool house to get everything started, and then we had to...
That COVID
you
thing
know.
happened.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited. We've rented out an entire hotel and convention center. We've got a Michelin-starred chef cooking for us, not once, but twice.
So excited about that part.
Everything is included, which is really cool. All you have to do is get to Springfield, Missouri. The coaches are going to be there, so our staff's going to be there, which is awesome. We're going to meet as a staff on Friday morning, and then the official conference kicks off, or the official block party kicks off on Friday afternoon with a King of the Hill competition at GP Athletics, which is just like, you guys have been there. It's a super badass gym. It's got, I don't know, probably 20 squat racks in it, and it's just a massive place with it's just a true barbell gym, but it's super clean, super nice. Actually, one of my old employees from Strong Gym owns that now, Spencer Graham, great guy, and actually been on the podcast before. And so we'll go train there, have a King of the Hill competition on Friday.
Real quick, what's King of the Hill?
Oh, King of the Hill. Now, all credit goes to Jordan Stanton here, but it's basically a super streamlined competition. So it takes out all of the logistical, the nightmare aspects of a meet, and yet creates the same energy and excitement of having a group of people all trying to hit heavy lifts. So basically you start with a 45-pound plate on the bar and you take 45-pound jumps. There's smaller increment jumps for
Press and things like that.
and some of the female lifters, but you take big jumps straight up to a PR attempt, and you just keep adding weight, and everybody lets everybody know when you're about to hit a PR attempt, and you just keep going until you max
People
out.
drop out, right?
Yep.
So somebody on deadlift, you're going to see people drop out at 225 and 315 and 365
And you can do
405.
singles, triples, doubles, anything?
Sure, I think so.
We're going to be flexible with that for sure. And you do get to pick, if it's like your heavy single or your PR for the day, you get to pick the specific weight.
Okay.
But up until that point, you're
So
taking
if you're like
big.
375 will be a PR list.
You can
I
pick
get to
that.
Take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's super friendly. Certainly there's going to be some competitive aspect to it. Mostly it's friendly. Mostly it's encouraging. It's a bunch of people cheering each other on. And I'm super excited to get the block coaches and the block community together for
Right.
this. We're all going to be staying in the same hotel, so the coaches are staying there as well. We've got the
Super
entire
excited about that
ballroom.
part.
We'll get the ballroom rented out, again, the whole hotel. And then Friday night is nice dinner, Michelin-starred chef on Friday night. Saturday all day is the conference. And so we've got speakers that are coming in to talk about all of the things that you love. So programming and nutrition and injuries. And we're still working on the speaker list and who all is going to speak and what the topics are going to be. But we want to keep it to really exciting things that will appeal to our clients and our community.
And importantly, not just PowerPoint by death.
No.
For 12 hours.
Or
We
death by
are
PowerPoint,
definitely taking breaks to enable people to talk to each other, mingle, check out different merch.
And again, you'll have food there the entire time.
Yes.
We're keeping you fed.
I'm
Yes.
super stoked about the aspect of us all being in
Yeah.
that one spot.
Nobody has to figure out like, what hotel am I going to stay at? Am I going to be at an Airbnb? Okay, I've got 45-minute break. Do I have enough time to go get food? Do I have to DoorDash? It's all provided. It's all part of that. And for us, it was maybe a little more work for us on the front end there, but it also made it so much cleaner because you just go, look, we know that everybody's going to have a better time. For me, when I go on a trip, even like this, we just had Walmart delivered groceries to the Airbnb. It's that thing that you have to constantly think about. You don't just get to enjoy the conference or the party or the camp or the weekend. You're like, where am I going to stay? How am I going to get around? How am I going to travel? Even travel, we're providing travel from the hotel to the gym and back to the hotel.
That said, this has been put together by our team very quickly. I feel like we just basically planned more than a wedding in like 2 months.
Yeah. But like you said, the foundation for this had been laid for the last couple of years. So we had kind of a nice, what it really is, a wedding is actually a good example, because if you're like the little girl that's been planning your wedding since she was 4, and now it's finally here, you're like, I got this. We got this figured out.
These are the colors.
There's one catch.
Yeah.
Because we're all in one spot and we basically bought the hotel for the weekend.
Yeah.
There's only 150 spots.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
And we've
must
already
claim
sold
yours.
about a third of them.
Yeah. A little over a third are already gone, and it's only been out for just a few days. Our staff alone is liable to take up a little over a third. And so there's really only going to be probably somewhere in the ballpark of 80 openings for clients in the community. So you want to get in and get in quick. It's a great deal. I mean, and we're not trying to make any money off this at all. This is not a profit thing for us. This is a community building thing. It's kind of the same way we treat the camps. It's the online coaching is what we do as a business and for profit, and it's there and we love it. But the community stuff, because we're an online coaching company, because we don't get to spend much time together, it's important for us that this is not something we have to worry about. How much money can we put in our pockets? What's the bottom line? We want to make sure that people come out and have a great time, and we want to just like break even on the deal. That's the goal.
We're going to be lucky.
Probably aren't going to break.
I was just looking at the P&L for the for the event. It's going to be tight.
Yeah,
but
that's
good
okay.
times.
That's
Good
okay.
times.
So it'll be a great time. So come on out. So yeah, Friday we got a great dinner. Saturday all day's the conference. Saturday night big party, a nice catered dinner in the ballroom, and then we're gonna have a DJ. We're gonna dance. I think we might do some karaoke. It's gonna be a blast on
But
Saturday
there will
night.
be
tubs?
no line dancing.
Hot tubs?
I have
Hot tubs?
made
I
that
don't believe.
rule. No line
well,
dancing.
yeah, there's hot tub.
Well, there's a hot tub at the hotel.
It's not in the ballroom though.
We're staying
Well-
we're staying in the HGI.
I mean,
HGI. comes
shout out
with
to all the hot tub boys out there.
That's right. Sunday is brunch again by Michelin starred chef. This brunch is
brunch, guys.
the brunch is so dumb how good this brunch is. My family goes this.
Oh,
It's
so
so
excited.
good. So we've got brunch, and you'll get to hang out at brunch and actually like eat. If you're a
Yeah.
client of Barbell Logic, eat with your coach, hang out with your coach, spend time there. I'm super stoked
Yeah,
about it.
I'm excited about it as the conference for the strength community. But this is also the first event that I have on the calendar that's that kind of a like
Just
a
for
party.
funsies. Yeah.
You know. So I mean, it's multiple layers of awesome.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good information that comes out of it. But for us, I think the big deal was it was all about the experience. We want people to have a great experience, a
Yes.
great time. It's not, and it's going to be a party in line with Barbell Logic culture. So we're not talking about, it's not.
Oh yeah, we'll probably want to be in bed by like 9:30.
Yeah, right. It's that, right? It's not any
Right.
craziness. It's just like we get to have fun together, hang out, dance a little bit,
Yeah.
have a drink if you want to drink, have some delicious food, get to train
Lift,
together.
yeah.
Like it's all the
Mhm.
things we love all put together in one weekend. So you can go to the website and sign up for the block party. Again, those are going to go fast. And so we just wanted to give a shout out for that. We're super excited about it. Haven't really got to talk about it, especially with the three of us being in the same room. That was fun. So we're going to do a little Q&A today, which we've done in the past. As usual, these have been curated a little bit. So Niki, why don't you read the first one? I think the first one is, and I'll answer the first one, or at least I'll start.
All right. We are getting right into something big with a question about programming volume during a cut. This one comes from Clay. Clay says, first of all, thanks for all that you guys are doing. Y'all have helped me a lot through the podcast to train very effectively, and it's become a very big and positive part of my life. Yay, Clay. I have a question directed mostly at Matt after hearing him talk about his recent cut. So Clay's background is that he says, I started LP back in September and have had really good results, especially on the squat. Problem is, I was probably too aggressive with the weight gain. I started out at about 210, 215, and jumped to 250 by New Year's, and I'm currently sitting at 265 with a 44-inch waist. And he's 27 years old at 6'2". He's also waking up his wife with snoring, so no bueno.
Relatable.
So his current programming is he's doing the USSF powerlifting meet in June. So that's happening next month. And he'd like to hit some good numbers, but he doesn't think he should wait until then to lose some fat. He's currently on a 4-day split doing volume days at 5x5, except for deadlifts, which he's doing 3x5. For intensity, he's doing 1x5 with 2x5 back offs at around 90%. So he's doing a lot of volume. Question, should I change my programming up to low volume, maybe heavy doubles and triples for the next month, so I'm able to do my programming on a calorie deficit, but maintain or improve my 1RM?
Yeah, great question. And so I've been going through a pretty big weight loss since Thanksgiving or so of this past year and really turned it up in 2021. I will say, like everybody knows, if you lose weight, especially if you're in the process of eating sub-caloric, performance almost always struggles a little bit there. When you have a lot of excess to lose, performance doesn't have to suffer very much. And if you lose it slowly and methodically, 1% body weight per week or 10 days or so, somewhere in that ballpark, performance won't suffer much at all. For me, because I am not at a point where I'm hitting all-time PRs anyway, I don't feel like my performance has suffered at all. But I've actually kept my volume relatively high because I'm just trying to put on muscle mass or protect muscle mass, like hold on to muscle mass as much as I can. I think I'm down about 40 pounds at this point. And so this is what I would say. If you're getting ready training for a powerlifting meet coming up, I don't think the question is, should I stay with the high volume that I'm at, or should I go to low volume and only doubles and triples? I actually think that there's a combination in there that's probably the best option, which is I love when you're cutting weight to do a top set of 1 to 3 reps, that top single, top double, maybe a top triple, and then do your back off sets to get your volume in. And one thing we have to remember about the back off sets with the volume, a lot of that volume is there to get the tonnage, to get the stress, to get the hypertrophy, and having some additional fatigue for the back off sets really doesn't matter that much. And so what we do is while we're fresh, we work up and we hit that heavy single, that heavy double, that heavy triple. And that's needed anyway for preparing for a competition. Doing sets of 5 doesn't carry over real well to hitting a top single for USSF meet. So what I would suggest is I wouldn't change a lot about your programming. You're doing a fair amount of volume now. I like a fair amount of volume because it continues to help with keeping you in a calorie deficit. But rather than doing maybe 5 sets of 5, I might do a top single or top double and then 4 sets of 5. Or 3 sets of 5, something like that. And then just don't worry too much if that back off set has to back off a little more than what you're used to, or if you're a little more fatigued than normal, because what really matters is, are you continuing to drive up that very first set, that top set? And that's what I've done, and it's worked really, really well for me. And so I'm not too worried about the back offs. As a matter of fact, I'll track the tonnage and I'll track the volume as much as I can. And a lot of times I'm even tracking things like density. I'm trying to get as much work as I can in a short period of time because I don't have 2 hours to give to a workout. We trained together today. You know, the saying, I move pretty quick at this point. It's not the old powerlifter Matt that would do only singles, even on warm-ups, and then sit in a chair and huff and puff for 8 minutes.
Did 2 heavy doubles in what it took Matt to do like 15 different bro exercises.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, this is relatable on so many levels here. I mean, I said that in response to the waking up my wife snoring at 265 because that's almost exactly when it kicked in. But he's basically the same height and weight that I was for most of my last 10 years. And interestingly, working with you, Matt, last year.
Yeah.
I mean, how much did you change your programming as I was
very much.
recompositioning?
Yeah.
My advice would be not to think about changing the program for a weight loss at all at this point.
Yep.
And I mean, primarily because it's going to be driven mostly by your diet anyways.
Yep.
And it's going to take a lot longer than just next June to lose weight.
Yeah.
So, prioritize prepping for the competition above everything right now. I mean, not saying throw caution to the wind with your diet, but
you shouldn't be 285 by the time the competition rolls around.
No, but you're also not going to be 225 by the time of the competition if you're doing it right. So work on getting into a very slight caloric deficit, let your training do what it needs to do for the competition. And then the recomp is going to take more like 6 months.
Yes. Or a year.
And even with that, at the numbers that I'm looking at here, both the performance numbers that he listed, the height and weight, I definitely think could continue to make progress and slowly
I do too.
recomposition.
I do too.
My deadlift, I PR'd my lifetime
most
deadlift.
of the time that's the one that goes up.
Going from 265 down to 240.
Yeah, because your waist goes from 46 to 39.
Right.
And you can breathe down there and get in better position. It's amazing. So I agree. One of the things I love about really the culture that Jillian has set with nutrition at BLOC is that everything that we do is habit-based and sustainable. Mm-hmm. So whether this is Clay specifically listening to this, or obviously, hopefully those of you who are listening who aren't Clay can take something from this as well, which is that idea of, for those who are trying to cut and eat in a subcaloric fashion, just like you said, a very small deficit is the thing that keeps this working. So so many people want to cut really fast. I've done this tons of times. 3 weeks before vacation, I'm going to lose as much as I can, look as good as I can in 3 weeks. That's completely unsustainable. And so for this, it's about just taking your time and doing it right. And a slight caloric deficit probably won't lead to performance decrease, and you'll be just fine.
Yep. Yeah, that habit-based is so important for really creating a consistent and steady diet foundation. And then the weight loss becomes just kind of like fine-tuning the deficit to drive that gradual loss. I got to a point working with Jillian last year where it was really the 30-minute walks that made the difference.
Yeah.
Like I could basically dial up how fast I wanted to lose weight by how many 30-minute walks I took.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where it was like 3 or 4 of those a week.
Because you're right at the deficit level. You're at 250, 300 calories at deficit, but doing a couple extra 30-minute walks,
extra 100 calories,
puts you at a 700 calorie deficit per day. Yeah, it makes a big difference. So there you go. All right, question number 2 from John on gender differentiation. Note from Dan says, it's not what you think.
Trigger warning?
Yeah, hot topic issue. Here it says, no, here we go. It says, hi, y'all. We got 2 y'alls.
Hey, y'all.
We got double y'alls the first 2 questions. These are Midwestern people. We love Midwestern people. I've said it before, but I don't want y'all to forget. I love the podcast. So much amazing information you've put out. I really enjoyed CJ's transition series, and I always enjoy listening to Matt and Niki lately. I've been going through, again, the post-novice and MED series. Anyways,
Sorry,
a question.
Andrew.
Implicit here is not Andrew. Like everyone that's been on the podcast
very often.
Yeah, I know. I don't take it personally. It's all good, John.
A question, if you'll humor me. There's a fairly popular fitness trainer / group that does a $1,000 certification to be certified as a coach / personal trainer for women specifically. I'm a dude. I'm also new to personal training. Am I really missing out on this much information for training female clients? Maybe that's the wrong way of asking it, but I hope you understand what I'm asking. Does this guy need a $1,000 certification to be certified to coach women specifically?
You do not, John. Don't spend your money on that. So, man, there are so many points I would like to make about this.
Or woman.
Okay. Y'all, there are so many points I want to make about this. So, I mean, looking at this from the perspective of this fitness trainer group, I mean, it makes sense in a really saturated market for a group of people to decide that, oh, this is a niche. I can decide to tell people that there's something that needs to be special about them. Like you could be a personal trainer just for running. You could be a personal trainer just for people who are coming off the keto diet. Like whatever little group that you think you want to target is something you can do. Women is a big, clearly huge group. And
like 51% of the population.
Yeah, like a whole bunch, I guess.
Yeah.
On their end as a business, I can see why they would want to do this. And I think there's enough things that they could maybe make up to say that are different enough between the two sexes to require a whole different certification. But really what I've found it comes down to is how good you are at connecting with the person who you're working with to figure out what's important to them and honestly be able to help them reach those goals or not. I mean, you could have a male and a female come to you and both have the exact same goals.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably wouldn't do much differently to them. Like there might be different psychological things, you know, the hormonal cycle that you need to be aware of, but not so much that you need to like change anything. It mostly has to do with mood and energy levels that you don't need to spend $1,000 to do. Just no, you don't need to spend $1,000 to learn that. So I think this is just coming from them wanting to set themselves apart in the market. If you're a good trainer, if you're a good coach, you just know how to connect with your clients, figure out what's important to them, and know how to support them.
Sure.
CJ and I talk about this a lot. Do we need to create a programming class or session within the academy for each special population? And it's really interesting psychologically because we see it for even just people wanting to become barbell coaches, but then you start running into these specializations like, do I need qualifications for women? Do I need qualifications for old people? There's this permission to coach kind of mindset that people have, that they feel that they need a certification in order to have permission to coach or to be qualified to coach. And time again, what we find both in experience and in the literature is that there's more variation within group than there is between group.
Yep.
Which is why our model is client-centered first, model-informed for life. Because like you said, Niki, it ultimately comes down to the individual. You need to understand the individual, their goals, their abilities, where their muscle mass is or isn't, and program to that. I will say that the principles course does have a section on quote unquote special populations and things like whether you need to program different for women or older populations. And we hit that.
By the way, it's funny that we even refer to women as special populations.
It's not a special
That's a trigger word for me a little bit. But
I know.
But here's why. Let me explain why.
It's in finger quotes because of exactly what I just said. Yeah.
So the reality is obviously there are more females on Earth than there are men. So they're the biggest population. They're not special population. But in the barbell world, they are still a minority, right? And culture tells women, especially Western culture, and I'm sure Eastern does too, I'm just less familiar with it, that they need to train different. That's what culture tells them.
Right. That's what bothers me about this is that's perpetuating a reason for women to feel like they need to wait for someone special to
That's
tell
right.
them what to do.
That's right. And I
Instead
don't
of
have
just
any
being
problem.
like, no, I can go in and train
That's right.
because I can train with whoever. I'm a
Sure.
individual.
Here's a specific example, in my opinion, of where the in-group variation versus between-group variation becomes significant, because the traditional classic, this is what I need to do to program for women, is switching to 5x3 for upper body lifts. That is not a women issue.
Yeah.
That is a lack of upper body muscle mass issue. And I have used that many times
Neuromuscular
effectively
efficiency, whatever.
for underweight males, to be completely honest. And that works really freaking well for people that don't have a ton of upper body muscle mass. It just happens that a large percentage of women fit into that category, but there's also a very large percentage of men that fit in that category.
The only time I think it would be necessary is if it's someone who's pregnant or postpartum.
Yes. So I was going to say, there's actually, I don't mind the idea of coaches pursuing a specialization as far as like finding your niche as a coach. Athletes, we have coaches that specialize in athletes. We have coaches that specialize in, you think about somebody like Sully who specializes in a senior population. We have people that specialize in, post-injury, like things like that. Like I think finding that specialized niche and carving out a niche for yourself is important. When you're early on in personal training, you kind of have to take everybody because you're broke and you're just like, and you don't even know what your niche is yet, right? And so you're just trying to coach everybody there is. The reality is, and this is the other thing that you just have to, John, right? I think is his name. Many of our females who sign up at BLOC request a female coach. And John, we'll fix that one, partner. That's just part of the deal, right? And that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Like there are people who, if you think about going to your doctor, especially if I were going to a male, somebody who was going to give me a physical or somebody who's going to check my prostate or somebody who's going to do, I'm like, I'd probably rather have a guy, right? And most ladies, and this is a blanket zone, most ladies, might rather have a female OBGYN or, you're shaking your head no. And Rachel's always had a guy too, which is interesting. She doesn't care. And if you don't care, that's great, right? But if you do care,
it comes down to the individual.
It's the personality. That's the thing, right? And so just paying the $1,000 to be able to coach females isn't going to do anything for you. If you find that you connect really well with a special targeted population of females, and it'll probably be a specific age group, a demographic, a socioeconomic status, and you might connect really well with that group, that'll be your specialization. That's fine. But you don't get that from the $1,000 certification.
Yeah, you could become a great coach and then decide you want to run a women's only gym because maybe that's great in the market for you and you can do it that way.
Yes.
As far as the postpartum goes, we just put out a new podcast, goes directly to that, and talking about lifting for women as well. And you get some really great insight into some of the social dynamics that are different and some really good perspective from Becca and
Anne-Marie.
Anne-Marie,
Yeah, they did a great job to have an episode on stress incontinence. And those are some differences that you see.
Yep, that's true.
One of the things that I found as a coach is if you're not able, and again, this is based on personality of not one, but both, right? But both the coach and the client. If you're not able to talk about those things with your clients as a coach, then you've built up a wall that says like, hey, like, I don't know that I can handle you if you have this thing because I'm too embarrassed to talk about it. Like it's my job as a coach to be able to talk about anything with my clients. And I don't keep our relationship completely professional, but if someone needs to tell me that they're having a problem with this, with any medical problem, with any physiological problem, with a mental health disorder, my job is to make sure that they're comfortable enough. Now, they may struggle with being able to be comfortable enough to share that with any coach, regardless of who the coach is. But my job is to tear down those walls as much as I can. And so regardless of what the demographic is. So, okay, excellent. Question from Ralph. Andrew, I'll let you take the first stab at this.
All right.
On shoulder pain with squat and press and how to potentially work back to squatting and pressing. Ralph has a history of bad shoulders, using thumbs around for low bar, has to use thumbs around. When I was preparing for the USSF online meet, it did. And since then, pressing, normal bench press, squat, and even bicep curls have hurt. Feels like a tendon is moving over bone or something during curls. I've been able to deadlift and close grip bench press without any issues, over a 500-pound deadlift and just hit a 300-pound close grip bench press, so pretty strong. Got a safety squat bar so I can squat and been able to do slower rows without issue. How can I get back to pressing and normal bench pressing? I've tried a couple times with light weights and there's pain in my shoulder during the ascent. Do you have any prehab or rehab exercises you like to add in here or similar situations?
Okay, so I'm going to make a couple of assumptions based on his description that it sounds to me like proximal bicep tendinopathy. And typically where I start when I'm trying to get back to normal on squat and press shoulder issues is by looking at grip, both on the squat, press, and also on the bench. He's already doing close grip bench press, so I'm assuming he's made that adjustment there. But My guess his squat grip is likely too wide, or at least could be narrower. And that would be one of the first things that I check. Counterintuitively, for a lot of people, the narrower grip is often less stress on the shoulder. It does usually require that you go thumbs around and have your wrist in a little bit more wrist extension, but frequently I've found that that helps with clients. However, some people also work better with a much wider grip. So the generic answer, not knowing any more details than this, would be to play with different grip widths. If you find the squat is causing it, one of the other things I do is put the squat at the end of the programming order as well, so that it doesn't irritate the shoulder before the other lifts. In my past, when I've had shoulder issues, particularly from the squat, that's made the rest of the workout worse. So I'll just flip the order, and oftentimes that'll help. And as far as prehab or rehab, I don't personally have any exercises. I find that the main lifts are really all I care to do. I find that managing the intensity and playing with grip to find something that works is 99.9% of the time all that it takes.
What do you think about one of the things I took from that I learned from Will Morris? We know the old adage about if you have muscle strains, we tend to do higher volume, that kind of STAR method routine, right? Like the 3 sets of 20, 3 sets of something like that.
Right.
But when we have tendinopathy issues, joint issues, disc issues, we often will play with things like 5 sets of 2
Sure.
and be able to stay relatively heavy but lighter reps. Have you played with that some and like that, or no?
Yes. So as far as variations that you can do to the lifts, there's a couple of things that I like to do, also have picked up from Will. One is to be very specific about where in the range of motion that it's happening. So in his case, he's talking about right off the chest. What I will try to do with that is, again, reduce the intensity so that you can slow it down first. And then reducing the number of reps per set and increasing sets is about minimizing the amount of fatigue, intra-set fatigue that you're accumulating, so that you can really focus on controlling the movement and avoiding, variation in the movement as you get tired. And then the number of sets going up is to make sure you continue to get the volume. And I do find that works really well. So for example, if it's on the bench or the press that you're finding it, lower the weight enough that you could do 5 sets of 2, 6 sets of 3, tempo press, where you go through the full range of motion, including through the point that's kind of sticky and past it. This is another thing that I picked up from Will, is that sometimes he'll do a variation, like if the pain is right at the touch point of the chest, vary the lift so that you actually increase the range of motion to go past where the pain
Go
is.
to a dumbbell or a cambered bar or somewhere you get bigger range of motion.
Exactly. And I guess this is one asterisk / go back that I will do. For whatever reason, incline dumbbell press has always felt amazing on my shoulder. Something about that angle and the extra range of motion for that type of pain, like anterior shoulder pain.
Yeah.
It might just be because I don't normally incline. It might be because it's extra range of motion at a lighter weight.
Yeah.
But I've always really enjoyed that particular movement. Maybe it would work better with a flat bench or an incline bench, but play with a variation where maybe you're not using as much weight. You can control the speed and you can move through a full range of motion and then build from there.
Yeah.
Find a rut that works and then build intensity from there.
And those guidelines that we laid out there work not just for this specific injury. That's sort of like what we do, right?
All of them.
We slow down the tempo. We find the spot that it actually hurts. We work through that. We try to keep the pain at 3 or under on the pain scale of 1 to 10, or at least see improvement in the pain scale over the course of the set and sets across the board. And often we'll go to higher sets and less reps. And so that's sort of the technique we tend to use. And that's for all of the things that aren't specifically muscle belly issues. Well, for those muscle belly issues, we still tend to like the higher volume, I think, to try to lay down as much collagen as we can and build as much tissue as possible. But so we kind of sort of try to identify where is the problem at this point. Is it joint, tendon related, or muscle?
I do try to get the intensity back up, not to the point where you're hurting yourself or anything like that. But one of the problems with the STAR model is that it takes so long to get back to where the heavy was that you sort of build up this like mental hurdle. And then when you get back to that weight, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, there's the quote unquote injury weight. So the sooner you can kind of get back into heavy reps, which is another benefit of the lower rep scheme.
That's right.
Is that you can rehab faster to your normal rep scheme.
And play around with frequency too. I've had some success with myself and other clients where it's just like, you know what, we're not going to press for 3 months or 2 months or whatever. And then we throw it back in and things feel good enough for us to continue with it. they actually get stronger because we've likely increased the frequency of the other press variation, and it tends to have some carryover. So if it gets to the point that it's just like really stressing you out and it's just like a ton of pain, like go ahead and see what it's like to just
pull it out
for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah.
My bet for him specifically, though, is the first thing I'd want to look at is his squat grip for sure.
Excellent. So actually, this is a great lead in.
All right. This one comes from Frank on adductor pain during squats at certain intensity. Frank, he says, I have been training for a couple years on and off with vacations and such, and just trying to get healthier and stronger. When I hit certain intensities for squat, it feels like my adductor tears. Well, geez, Frank, that sounds awful. I've tried some prehab exercises, but wonder if this might be like Matt's issue with the pec tear above a certain level. Do some people just seem to, for whatever reason, have certain muscle be incapable of completing certain movements because the muscle will tear? And
Yeah,
Frank
that's a great
says,
question. And
Thank you, Frank, for saying thanks.
So I'm going to assume, to make the answer different than what you just answered, that we are actually dealing with adductor muscle bellies. Now, I've had clients certainly deal with adductor tendinopathy as well, and we handle that different. So that tends to express itself more up closer to the groin. So if the pain is up more in the groin and it's sort of like this consistent, dull pain that is there, like whether there's, no weight, empty barbell, heavy weight, it's always there, it's probably more of a tendinopathy issue. The idea that he says, I feel like I'm getting little tears in my adductors when I get to a certain level of heavy, says, yeah, that's probably a muscle strain of some sort. And so, and this is, let me just say, this is completely a theory that I have. I don't know that it's true and don't know that there are lots of studies that have been done on this or any studies whatsoever. But when you actually have a legit muscle belly tear, you don't avulse, your pec tendon or your bicep tendon, but you actually tear a fair amount of muscle fiber in there. And that could be a little bit of muscle fiber, which we call a strain, or a lot of muscle fiber, which we call a tear, muscle fiber that's tearing. Then it literally leaves a little tear. It's like taking, a t-shirt and tearing a spot in it, or a piece of paper and tearing a spot. And so what we do is we try to, rather than let it scar, this is why we do more volume, to try to allow the sliding filaments to slide back and forth over themselves while it's repairing so that it doesn't scar, it continues to lay down collagen. But here's what I've noticed with relatively bad muscle belly tears, there's always a divot. So my right pec, I've torn both pecs. My right pec, I have no divot in. It wasn't as bad of a tear. I can't find the divot. I can move around. There's a little bit of scar tissue in there, but not bad. The left pec, there's a golf ball size hole in my left pec.
No, Matt, I don't want to feel that.
And
Thank you, though.
My left pec is the one that tends to be a problem when I get with weight over 405. And so the idea there is probably if you have really had you've got some divots, you've got some places that have never recovered.
But hold on here.
Yeah.
What are the odds
that this guy has a big adductor tear?
Has ripped his adductors
Probably
off the bone to the point.
He hasn't. Then it'd be an avulsion.
It just says it feels like
It
my
feels
adductor
like,
tears.
and he said, is this like Matt's where you literally tore your pec?
Well, but I tore muscle belly. I didn't tear the tendon.
And so what did your chest look like when that happened?
Blue.
Right.
Purple.
So the first question I would ask Frank would be,
Did he bruise?
right. Was there
Is
any
he bruising?
sign of some kind of internal bleeding? And likely is not the same as your situation unless he had some really bad pain and some really bad bruising, right?
People always know if they have torn their adductor.
So
I would
how
offer
do
a
you then
slightly
handle it?
Different hypothesis.
Okay.
I would have to see, again, similar to the previous question, I'd have to see the lift and his movement. But typically when somebody says, when I hit certain intensities, X, Y, or Z happens, or I feel X, Y, or Z, is it the weight? My hypothesis would be that something is changing in the movement.
That's what you're doing with the
When
weight.
he's
pattern
exposing
changes.
parts of his body to a stress that it's not adapted to.
Right.
I will say there's probably some form breakdown, and the issue is not necessarily that it's a form breakdown issue and that you have to have perfect form, but it's that his body's not adapted to whatever's happening when he gets into this situation. So maybe he's not as disciplined with keeping his knees out, or maybe his knees are
Maybe his
caving
knees
in.
are out, but he relaxes his hamstrings, and all of a sudden you take a lot of that tension off the hamstrings, you put it on the adductors, and the adductors go, ouch. Not used to this.
Don't know what the answer is,
be a
but
lot of
my
things.
guess is when somebody hits a really heavy weight, or it's finally hitting that weight where there's variation coming into the lift, that would be my first question. What does it look like when you start getting to those weights? Unlikely, in my opinion, unless, again, he's had a, oh my God, the inside of my leg is completely purple kind of moment, that it's the same case as you.
Right. Yeah, that's a good, really good point. I agree. So then the key there is to replicate the reps. This is why you need a coach, right? This is why you need to, absolute worst, you should be videoing
Videotape yourself.
your light sets and your heavy sets, and then you can go back and look at them side by side and say, did something change?
Yep. Now, the other thing he could think of, or try as a small variation that we often recommend is adjusting your stance angle.
Yeah.
That can sometimes
toe angle,
change and,
right.
Allow you to move past, or at least keep moving to heal from it.
Yep. Good. Andrew, why don't you read number 6 and we'll have Niki.
Okay. This is the stand question, right?
Yes.
You got to stand, Niki. My company is planning our return to office for next month as the government eases COVID-related restrictions. Some people are launching a group on Strava to run/cycle and have some fun together. This is fine and good and obviously misguided.
This is a great line. Keep reading.
Because running is foul and evil and not related to strength training. Emoji, clown face.
Emoticon, which is the only way to do it.
Yes, we just talked about that last night. I'm so out of the cool loop. I feel compelled to propose an alternative, but, quote, introduction to strength lifting, unquote, does not seem super fun. Any ideas of strength-related activities I could try and organize for a bunch of colleagues? I'm assuming access to the rather well-equipped gym next door for a small group. What comes to your mind?
Stan, this is what you have to do. You have to start a lifting group that's called Strength Training for Running and Strength Training for Cycling.
There we go.
And it's strength lifting.
Strength training for booty building.
Strength lifting for women.
Yeah. Strength lifting for dad bods.
Yeah. And you have them come in.
And just trick them.
What would make your job a lot easier to, Stan, is if they all signed up for club coaching, because you don't have to be responsible for what you're going to program for them. But everybody lifts 2 out of the 3 sessions on their own, and then you meet together once a week for a session together.
Right.
And by the end of it, maybe you have consistency points, or you look at who progressed the most on their first starting 3x5, and then in 3 months you look at their last 3x5 and see who did the best, whatever, if you want to actually gamify it at all. But I would suggest calling it something that they're maybe light in them a little bit.
Yeah.
Call it like cycling power development.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or like hill power development.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like make it,
Can you tell that we've been in business and marketing way too long?
I mean, I had a cyclist in one of my academy groups, and he had an incredible amount of data on his cycling. I mean, he had a coach who was giving him the amount of watts he was putting out on every single stroke.
Was it a German guy or no?
No, just a Minnesotan.
We have a guy that's a client at BLOC who's a professional German, national level country racer. And it's like whatever you call like the road racing, like the long stuff that they do, like Tour de France stuff. He's not Tour de France level, but he's like that style, not track cycling. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Those guys are nuts about
data
metrics.
heads because they can measure every single stroke. And he was working with his coach, and they could measure the power output as he did his LP, and his pedal power went up.
My gosh.
Over the time.
This is what you need to do.
So
That's great.
anyways.
Excellent. Okay, next question, Andrew. I'm going to ask this one to you. It's a power clean rack position question, obviously, as the resident Olympic lifting expert. Question from James on power clean rack position. I'm a noob to the power clean, but I'm wondering, why is the front rack position as it relates to the wrists often talked about in terms of mobility or flexibility of the wrists instead of wrist strength? I've been reading through old weightlifting articles on one-arm lifts and wrist strength, and they seem to be a priority in the programming of old. Kind of like how achieving a rock bottom Aztec grass squat is better built through strength than performing mobility work to hit maximal depth. Why is it mobility/flexibility as opposed to strength?
What is wrist strength?
Yeah, I think we need to just define some terms first, because there's a lot of things being used kind of interchangeably, in at least one case, I think, incorrectly. So we'll talk about wrist strength. I would consider that, because we talk about strength as the ability to produce force, that would be moving from extension to flexion, or the other way around.
Right.
With
If you were open-handed, be like just slapping someone.
Your ability, how powerful of a slap could you generate?
Backhanded
Could you knock somebody unconscious?
Have you seen those
only
slap
moving
battles?
your wrist? Oh yeah, the slap battles are amazing.
They probably know a thing or two
Who's
about
the
wrist
one of
strength.
the guys, the big bench presser, the Russian does it, and he's incredible.
That scares the crap out of me. I
Oh
think
my
I'd rather
God.
be punched.
Yeah,
honestly.
Kirill, yeah,
Like,
that's
their
oh my
hands
gosh.
are just like
Oh.
slabs of concrete.
They knock each other unconscious.
Yes.
Open-handed
But
slap.
I also just think we shouldn't talk about strength with the word in front of it being a joint.
Yes, I felt
Strength.
like you were coming.
Yes.
The
Okay.
wrist itself does not have strength.
Well, so right. So this becomes the important terminology or definition that I think we need to cover, which flexibility I would generically describe as just the joint's ability to move through a range of motion.
Yes.
How far can you push a joint? Mobility, in my opinion, is I think what he's really asking, and that's the ability, how effectively you can move a joint with strength, or how easily you can move a joint through a range of motion. To maybe use a more relatable example would be like in his example, an astrograph squat. He referred to the best ability. What did he say about the ability to develop mobility?
Yeah, is better built through strength than performing mobility work, maximum depth.
So what I would argue there is that an astrograph squat is a good way to develop mobility in the bottom of
Yeah.
a squat because you are training strength through that range of motion. And so mobility is sort of, in my opinion, kind of a hybrid of strength and flexibility. The flexibility is how far can your joint go, and then the mobility is how much strength can you exert in that full range of motion.
So what do you need for the front rack for a
So back to the original question for the front rack, the reason it's not really common to talk about is that front rack is not usually limited by strength or mobility for that matter. And the reason we know this is that we can get most people into a reasonable front rack position in one session.
Yeah.
Now, there's some people that legitimately have either really bad anthropometry for that,
right?
or really bad shoulders for it, or maybe sometimes it's the wrist, but typically not a limiting factor. There are instances where wrist mobility and wrist strength and wrist endurance are a factor.
Sure.
More often within weightlifting, in my opinion, is the snatch overhead
I was
position.
going to say the snatch or the
Yep.
jerk.
Or the jerk,
Where
yes.
both
overhead
actually
positions
would require some significant strength in the muscles around the wrist.
yes.
Where you go from
Yes.
extreme, like
Right.
a major change in angle of the
You're
wrist.
holding, 300-400 pounds,
600 pounds.
600 pounds if you're
as we've
LaShaw.
seen now.
Yeah, with pretty
Right.
significant wrist extension. And there are some strength exercises that I've used, actually kind of basically stolen from a lot of the baseball strength
yeah.
training. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen those, basically
Yeah,
the
bat-
rice.
the rice. That's
Yeah,
what
you get a
Roger
bucket of
Clemens did,
rice.
and Nolan Ryan.
Yep.
and-
You reach your hand
Yeah.
in
I
and
never
grip.
knew what that was for. I thought it just felt cool.
Yeah, if you Catalyst Athletics has some good videos out there on how to do some wrist strength and endurance work. But to his original question, the reason it's not really popular is that one, it's not usually a limiting factor for most people, particularly noobs. Two, the exercises themselves are going to over time develop that, and it's really not going to be an issue until you start doing a lot of overhead work at much higher frequency and volume than a noob would do.
Yeah, it's good. I think I'm going to wrap it up there. It's
Well,
almost.
the last question was so good.
Do you want the last one?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do the last one. Okay, ask it.
It doesn't have to be long answers, you guys.
Okay, short answers.
All right, Mr.
Okay.
Talkers.
Okay.
Favorite or most impactful non-strength books for each of us? Matt, go.
Non-strength books. My favorite fiction book of all time is Lonesome Dove, and I still read it frequently to just kind of get my mind. I love fiction. Brett McKay convinced me. I'd never read fiction and my whole life and never really liked it. I was like, it's a waste of time, but it takes my brain out of things. I love it. And then I've got a fair amount of business books that I'll go back to that are cathartic for me, like The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I've talked about that on the podcast before. I think, a lot of my business books that I read now with the size that the business is, I don't think would carry over to the listeners. And so if I think back about things that made big impacts on me as I was starting business or trying to learn that, things like The E-Myth was an important book, like How to Systemize, things about Measure What Matters by John Doerr, which is the basis of the OKR and how we've adapted it to the game plan. We have podcasts on that. I would be remiss to not say, and really this is not just an answer to like, please, mama, but the Bible's big for me. Like I really love the Bible. I love reading Proverbs. It's just so good. Like even if you don't come from that Judeo-Christian background, like it's just great wisdom. Proverbs is great. I love Romans. So there's certain books of the Bible specifically that I'll go to that are cathartic for me. And so those are big ones. I'm sure I have a few more, but
Is it favorite?
Favorite or most impactful non-strength books?
There's a couple that come to mind. I'm going to have to say Endurance, the book about Ernest Shackleton, in the Endurance, getting stuck in Antarctica and their journey from in 1917. This is right in the middle of World War.
It was written by him?
No,
about him. Okay.
No, it's about him. They have a lot of journal entries and pictures. It's early black and white pictures.
Nice.
But this is like literally the middle of World War, and they leave before it starts, and they get into South America and find out basically that World War I is occurring. But it's this insane journey and kind of testament to human nature's ability to not give up with good leadership and camaraderie.
What's the name of it again?
Endurance.
Check that out.
And it has a special place for me because my grandpa, who passed away about 10 years ago now, inscribed it on the inside of the front panel. And without going into like the personal side of it, it just kind of gets me choked up thinking about like what he saw in me and kind of leaving that note for me in this book and having that kind of aspiration to be a leader like Shackleton, and to be able to take his crew from being stuck on an island to surviving. Yeah. Stuck on a frozen island.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
That's it. Good?
Yeah. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Okay.
What's you?
For nonfiction, the ones that I'm really into right now, the first one is Deep Work, which I'm honestly not finished with it yet.
It's great.
About 3/4 through.
Welcome to my life.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Do you read it?
It made me think of you.
Matt.
I was like, oh, when Matt goes on vacation,
That's what
he does his deep work, and then he comes back and he just plows through and reinvents the company. It's stressful, but then it's great.
Right.
But yeah, it made me think of you a lot. And I think that one is really important right now because it's so easy to just be constantly distracted and to let yourself be distracted. And then you really kind of miss out on what you can be capable of. And actually, the other one that I think goes hand in hand with that is that I just loved recently was Sparking Joy, the Marie Kondo method, because both of these books help you identify what's really important to you and help you figure out how to spend your time.
I think I would like that
with that
Marie Kondo book.
It's such a wonderful
another
thing
book
to do.
I think is great. Have you guys read Atomic Habits?
Yes.
It's another great one that kind of like goes into that, that same sort of like, it's just really impactful. I've given that book away as a gift. One of the things I'll think about is with that question of the most impactful non-strength books. I'm not giving away strength books as gifts. I'll occasionally give business books away because I talk to other entrepreneurs or whatever, but I think about what books I give away the most. And Atomic Habits I've given away a lot. When I find a book that I really like, I'll order like 7 or 8 of them from Amazon. And I'll just put them on the shelf in the library. I'll have a discussion with somebody at the house. I'll be like, you know what? Hold on a second. I'll run upstairs and I'll be like, you got to read this.
That's cool.
I'll give it to them.
Yeah.
So I've given that one away.
Yeah.
Any other ones?
Into Thin Air by Krakauer. Did you guys read that one about the Everest excursion where it's just
amazing.
Like, most people died. He was there.
Oh, wow.
It's a legit story.
Yeah.
I didn't think
that's right.
Historically accurate.
Yeah. Ooh, man, that's an amazing book. You'll sit down and read that.
I have no interest in climbing Everest.
Oh, me neither.
No,
I don't want to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to maybe
probably die at the top. Not
and
maybe.
It's apparently now just like littered with garbage.
Yeah,
And all the way.
It's like Walmart.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Bone Clocks. Have you guys heard of Bone Clocks?
No.
The same person who wrote Cloud Atlas, which I haven't read yet, but the same author. Man, you guys are dads. You'd probably really like this one.
Wow.
But
Bone Clocks.
Bone Clocks. It's like, I can't even try to describe it because it has to do with like time
That sounds like Cloud
travel.
Atlas. When I tried to watch that movie, I was like,
it's all over the place.
I should have eaten LSD or mushrooms before I watched this. I didn't get any of it.
It's the last book that made me cry and that I still think about often.
Wow.
It's really good.
Interesting.
Wow.
So there
you were
you go.
supposed to pick one, and that was like
I'm sorry, I picked
7 books.
That's all right. Yours was actually the most impactful.
The one that I would hand out, the one that would be like in the Atomic Habits category, would be Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl.
There's some stuff where he starts getting
I actually
into
thought about that when you talked about your first one.
Yeah.
There's a similarity
It's
there.
a similarity there. What I like about it is it doesn't come with the little bit of the baggage of Man's Search for Meaning, which is like that whole logotherapy thing where it starts to get into a little prescriptive thing, but I definitely love the message. And I think about that one frequently.
Yeah.
Whenever I start convincing myself that something is hard or I'm frustrated.
Is
I'm like,
Auschwitz hard?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's sort of my
no, it wasn't.
my kind of.
I didn't mean that as a joke. By the way, if you're listening, the answer is no, it wasn't.
No, it was not.
That was awful.
It
right?
was.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like it helps sort of put things in perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
In particular, that his message being that maintaining hope, even in the worst of circumstances, is the thing.
Yeah.
And
that's so good.
But it does have the parallels with endurance. So there's something about that for me, just deep down, that not giving up is so core to who I am. just like anytime I see somebody doing that, it just gets me emotional.
It's definitely not the same thing. It's certainly don't want to compare it. It's interesting though how many business books I read that they're like the people who are successful in business and end up are really like the entrepreneurs and the teams that just don't give up.
Right.
Because every business goes through like these awful, stressful times. And I'm definitely not comparing that to getting stuck out on a frozen island or being in a concentration camp or, you know, like it's not the same thing. But it's ultimately, it comes down to like just most people at some point, there's like, nope, I'm out.
Right.
And the people who decide to stay longer and say like, I'm not out, I'm in this to the end, no matter what, are the ones that almost always end up being the most successful. So there you go. There's an hour of Q&A by us. We got some fun questions in there. We got some serious questions in there. And again, we're so stoked for the block party that's coming up in August. So go check out barbelllogic.com, sign up for the block party. Again, it will sell out fast. We know it will. It's only been up for a couple days.
You know what I think we should do?
What?
Do you remember the Bears did that rap song in the 80s?
Yeah, of course.
I think we should do a block rap song where we all do.
When we get together, we should do like, we should write a rap song.
Or as a promo. Let's just do a Zoom call.
We'd have to get together. Oh, we
rap
could do that.
song.
Jimmy Fallon does that. Fallon does that,
yes,
right?
Yes.
The Roots, and they'll play like, and they're all on Zoom, and they play a song together.
We'll do it.
They play like All About That Bass, and they sing it together, and they're playing like the kazoo and stuff. I want the kazoo.
Yeah, I feel like we're all as talented as those people are.
Clearly. I'm always thinking like, there's obviously a technological delay here. Like that's obviously all of those individual files have been sent to a producer like Steven, like our producer, and then he perfectly pairs and matches all of them.
That's what it is.
Anybody that's out of tune or off key is like, they're out.
That's why I like,
they always
that's why I like the Bears analogy a little bit better.
Yeah.
You know, football players trying to rap
It wasn't
in the
very
80s
good.
before rap was really kind of like...
You had the fridge in there.
Yeah, exactly.
The fridge. So good.
John McMahon trying to rap.
That's right. That's perfect. Hey, thank you for listening to another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. We love answering your questions. You can always reach out. The email address is in the show notes below. Check them out wherever you listen to your podcast. We'd love a 5-star review, specifically at iTunes or what is now called Apple Podcasts. I don't think iTunes actually exists anymore.
Okay.
Apple Podcasts, 5-star review. You know, tell people that you like us. That's great. It helps us along. We're way over 1,000, and now we've been asking for this for years. It's time to push for 1,100, 1,200.
2,000.
One of the top reviewed podcasts in the strength and fitness industry, which is really cool. Congrats. It helps our algorithm. So if you like the podcast, that always helps us. Mostly, we'd love to see you in Springfield, Missouri, August 6th through the 8th. So sign up and come and see us and hang out with Matt, Niki, and Andrew and the entire BLOC crew. We'll see you guys next week.